So when somebody asks me, they do, hello?
There's a delay, I think.
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
Okay,
Between the Zoom.
we already live now.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's start. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good night, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this Walkie Talkie number 5, session 5. This Walkie Talkie is a hanging out, telling stories conducted by ruangrupa to connect with some friends where proximity doesn't refer to something geographical or physical. It's about stories on what it means to work and live together. And on this fifth session, we have Lara Khaldi as our host, and both as a host and also storyteller. Lara Khaldi is actually based in Ramallah, Palestine. She's a cultural worker, curating some exhibitions, and also she also wrote some publications, and she has been traveling the planet for her work as a cultural worker and a researcher and curator. And then this fifth session also is attended by two invited friends of Lara. She will introduce them both, and then that's how this hanging out, telling stories will go. So I will give the floor to Lara to continue. Lara, it's yours.
Shukran, Andan.
Afwan ukhti.
Yeah, it's really nice to be on this platform, although we don't see any of you. But just to introduce my friends and colleagues who I'm going to be conversing with today. So we know each other from Ramallah, but we are all now outside. We go back and forth, but I just moved to Amsterdam a couple of weeks ago. Reem is speaking from Brussels and Noor from Cairo. We have worked together many times, and our interests and in general in life and in work overlap a lot. So Reem is a curator and a writer and part of a collective, a subversive film, and has been looking for a long time at the question of the archive related to Palestine and solidarity networks in other places in the world. So we've had a very long conversation, ongoing for a long time, for years now. And Noor, it's the same. And Noor is an artist who is usually based in Palestine, but now between Cairo and Jerusalem. And Noor has been working a lot with also with the question of the museum in Palestine, and also kind of non-canonical history of art in Palestine as well. And she wrote a really great novel recently, a couple of years ago, which is titled "The Earth Doesn't Tell Its Secrets," his father once said, which revolves around this narrator's fascination with the myth of the first Palestinian museum. And so, yeah, as I said, we share this questioning around archives and museums, especially from the context of Palestine. And we, in our works, we all use stories a lot. So we thought today we tell stories from our research, from our lives, from that we've come across, instead of telling you more about the context and explaining. But we were, and today we were speaking maybe like a couple of hours ago about where to start from and how to start. Just it's always very difficult to start. But for us, of course, the conversation is ongoing. So whenever we meet, we just pick up from where we left it the last time. And so this is what we decided to do. We naturally started speaking about the different stories, our different works, and the overlaps and how we could start. And we were speaking actually about the loss or lost exhibitions, lost archives that we come across and that we work on. And this, but also like how loss becomes a kind of issue. So maybe we pick up from where we left it there, because I remember, I think Noor was saying like how narratives and stories around objects and around archives and are become much more important than the objects themselves. That's where we stopped, I think. So thought maybe we can continue.
Yeah, yes, I think it's what is interesting about things that got lost is their effect on our memory, because suddenly their value become much more important, even if we don't really know what is missing. And a lot of times we don't know what is missing, but because it is missing, it's valuable. We put value in it. And I encountered this idea of loss during a research about the 17 lost exhibition. And these 17 lost exhibitions were first written as an article at the website of the Palestinian Museum, the first Palestinian Museum. And I was fascinated from the times that I keep hearing about these 17 missing exhibitions as if they are one thing, because they are missing. So they are the 17 missing exhibitions. And I started to search on one of these exhibitions, because I was based at that time in Switzerland, and one of these exhibitions get lost in Switzerland. So I was kind of tracing the way that these or the path that these paintings went through. And at the end, I found them in London, but finding them was not magical as much as looking for them and hearing from different people who witnessed part of this journey of these lost paintings, and all the rumors that were generated out of these missing paintings. And when the moment that we see those objects, they suddenly they get back to their size somehow. Their value is much higher. There's no magic around them anymore. Yeah, and I think it's also this idea of missing is very much related to the Palestinian context in different ways. It's not only with the missing paintings, but it's also with the artifacts and with other objects that we don't know, because when we know where are these objects, suddenly they are not ours in a way. But when they are missing, we know that they are missing, and maybe no one will find them, so they are somehow safe in a way.
Yeah, and in a sense, the narrative is also around them is kind of, because the moment that they are in a sense found, there's a fixed narrative. So we were just speaking about a film where you know, we had moved from this to like speaking about the archive. Maybe Reem will now speak a little bit about it, but the film archive that the PLO kind of lost in '82. And there has been a film where it kind of proves that it is in the Israeli military archive. And I was saying, this is, no, I mean, one of the scenarios, of course, always has been that this is there, right? That there are so many stories around this archive, so many stories. And one of them is this, and it's kind of the known secret, right? But then this film points at it, and it kind of closes the story, closes the narrative, which is kept alive by the telling of the stories. But also maybe, Reem, we were speaking with Reem about these networks of solidarity that are also kind of, you know, this whole story with the archive and how when uncovered, you uncover also whole networks of solidarity.
Yeah, I mean, with the film archive, no, it's like I mean, like with the exhibitions, right? It's like with this particular film archive that was compiled over years by the different film units within the revolutionary body, by different political fractions. So they kind of stopped being after the invasion of Beirut, and it was left behind, you know, because many of the people who were taking care of the archive fled Lebanon, and they left it behind, right? And then they left it in a particular place with a particular person, and then, you know, like from there, the trace of the archive disappears, right? So it's this. So since then, there's like, these like different kind of, you know, like, I don't know what to call them, like, it's been, you know, like the mystery of the archive, right? So all the different imaginations of, you know, like where it could be, what happened to it. And this, you know, like, so I think quite a few people were busy with kind of, you know, like also kind of looking for the archive. And then, of course, one of the scenarios is that, you know, it was seized by the Israeli army. And that it exists in the Israeli archive. But then, like, you know, like, because through the collective subversive film, like we started to actually like kind of, you know, like dig around for films, right? You know, this archive does not exist. We don't know where it is, but what about the films, right? Because film is not just one single object. It's not a painting, right? There are like all these different, you know, like copies that exist in like, you know, in more than one object. And then slowly you realize that this archive actually exists, right? But it's totally spread out in different localities, from like institutions to people's homes, and then also to people's memories, right? Because also stories became, you know, like stories about the films also became, you know, like kind of mechanisms for tracing. So so basically, like we would follow leads of like names of directors and names of the films, and kind of, you know, like look around in the countries where the filmmakers were from, and then you kind of end up finding them in archives / institutions, right? Like the French Communist Party archive, right? And then there you kind of uncover all the distribution and production network that was actually that was in function at the time, and we're talking about, you know, like the 70s, throughout the 70s, and then it suddenly became so clear, you know, like all this, like the alternative way of distributing cinema, right? And it was political, of course, and they kind of, you know, like revealed this these solidarity networks that were kind of coming to the revolution, but then also like you know, like going out of it and spreading their works in their homes and so on. And like, for example, there's this film that was made by the Newsreel group in the States, and it was made in 1973, and the film is called Revolution Until Victory. And it's a compilation film, and basically it contextualizes the Palestinian fight for self-determination. And it was made to be like kind of an organizing tool, right? So, you know, kind of to be screened and in the States to mobilize support for Palestinian struggle. But then, you know, because we wanted to show it, we wanted to see it, first of all, and then, you know, like also screen it. And one of the members of the collective got directly in touch with the newsreel group, and they didn't have it. They didn't even remember it as a film. And then slowly uncovering, then they started to remember that at some point there was an Iranian student group that was screening the films in the States. But then at some point we realized that there is a copy of the film, and it's in Australia. And it was screened in Australia also sometime in the 70s. And then since then they've kept the copy, right? So that might have been the only copy, right, of the film that exists, at least, you know, like that we've known. So it was like kind of also uncovering the history of the, it's amazing, right? It's like you uncover not only the history of the film or the, you know, like solidarity movements, but then we also, you know, like started to, it uncovers the history of the group that made it itself, the newsreel group. And they have a very complex history there because they splintered, and there were like ideological and political differences, you know, like that made them separate, and this kind of led towards, you know, like the loss of this film. So yeah, I mean, it's, but this is, so yeah, it's like looking at an archive, not as one particular, not as a collection, right? But like an archive as a sort of a constellation, right, of all these of the copies that exist, that are kind of spread out, right, in these kind of spots that, yes, that represent, you know, like this, yeah, the solidarity, the way the solidarity was functioning in the 70s.
Yeah, and you know, as Noor was saying, this value of there's of course the film itself or the object itself, but like the what it tells about the history and the movement of the objects and interactions is also, I mean, sometimes of course it's even more important because like for example with these exhibitions, like the narrative around them today, and also the films, the narratives around them today are more individualized. And this is what, you know, I was like thinking about when like how it's very important how it uncovers like how the tracing happens. It shows the relationship between like this student film festival and solidarity group, and you know the group in Palestine, in Lebanon, and in the States, right? Like this whole constellation, and it's a collective like relationship, but also with the exhibitions, right? Like the exhibitions from the 70s, especially, that they weren't individualized. They were more part of a kind of collective movement. But the way they are seen today, and the value that is kind of, that the object itself produces, is this individualized, that filmmakers have to put their own names, as you know, that it's kind of reinscribed as individual work in the work in how you read the film industry, for example, today, or the art world today, you know, that you inscribe them in a more individualized, yeah, like under one name, under one, and I think, yeah, like you know, one of the things that so, you know, when I started looking at museums in Palestine, I was very much working with kind of more institutional critique, like this, always about, you know, about the problem of the museum. But then this led me, but slowly, into just looking at different practices, maybe, or different yeah, different practices than actually showing the object in a building, you know, as simple as that, and what secrets and other stories could tell you. And I was really captured by these urban myths, and there was this one urban myth about, and we all know it, we grew up with it, no? This urban myth that there are communiques from the first Intifada in 87, buried in backyards and in buildings, right? In the walls of buildings, and like the objects of these communiques, there are many private collections. There are, you know, people have some material from it, but this actual, you know, hiding, like how the communiques were, of course, hidden or buried, of course, is very telling, because if you're caught with them at the time, then, you know, burning them would also implicate you. So you would hide them, you would bury them, you would dump them in wet concrete. Yeah, what remains important is not the actual material communiques, but of course the myth that the city, for example, of Ramallah, let's say, with its, you know, political desires at the moment, the myth keeps an alternate or a politics of emancipation still kind of ongoing, still told, right? Like the story is being told over and over and over again, and it's not about them being presented in a museum, right? Like one of the things Edward Said says, really something really nice, like that in order, like when you don't have institutions to produce and manufacture the story, right? Like you have to keep on telling the story, like you have to keep it afloat, to keep it like there. Yeah. So and by this telling of the story, of course, the story changes, and so the location of the place, the what these communications, the content, so it's also kind of liberated over and over. Not to say that, of course, it can be taken advantage by hegemonic narratives as well, but yeah, these kinds of course, and it's a story about the collective, because the people, the persons who hid these communiques or who worked on these communiques is unknown, is not.
Yeah.
And the day that the names are put on a label and the communique is shown, you know, we all know what this means, or this kind of represents the, so that, you know, this yeah, this problematic becomes with this material object. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also makes me think of, like, you know, because like I mentioned, like when because also part of the research involves speaking to filmmakers or people who were part of film units, or, you know, like were somehow in relation to them, or film production. And sometimes we would speak to the same person more than once, and about the same event or a same situation, or, you know, like, and I mean, because at first we were fascinated. I mean, maybe it's worth saying that, you know, like this for myself and for Muhannad, who's part of the subversive film as well, you know, like coming across this history, the cinematic history, was fascinating, right? It's like we didn't know about, you know, like about militant film, right? Palestinian militant film. So the first encounters were always, you know, like really fascinated. If that's fascinating, we would be like in awe. And but then when we would re-meet the people, some of them at least that we've seen again, and we would speak about the same, you know, like the same things, because maybe we didn't manage to record certain, you know, like facts or whatever, and then we would ask, and then you realize that, you know, like also they tell you a different story, No, it's like the second time around, it's a different story, it's different people, it's maybe a different place, it's maybe related to a different film, or and that was that. I think that made us kind of like kind of stop for a moment, right? And kind of question, what does like, for example, militant cinema represent anyway, right? In terms of like this kind of collective narrative or collective memory. And so yeah, it was just, we realized that like that every there is no like one single memory, even like even if film is actually a document, right? It's like it's a locked work, right? It has the beginning and the end are constantly the same. But like what you generate out of that film, right, in terms of context, in terms of like kind of the conversations, they constantly produce different like different stories about them, and different like narratives. And this is what became actually quite interesting in terms of thinking about like archive and archival practice. Because I think we spoke about this the other day, and we like talking about, because when we keep on saying the archive, as if it's like one, like one body of works, right? Or like a building, or but I think what we actually mean, the archive, is like the actual the practice around the archival material, right? Mm-hmm. And then that by itself kind of just explains, or like shows the archive as a multitude of like of narratives, of critiques, of like of contexts. So yeah, I think that was like kind of like just looking at like what does how to look at like also like this, going back to the uncovering and the loss of this like whatever, this archive in 82, and how that also like kind of the myth that it produced, but then also how you unpack it, and like how you demystify it by like kind of like looking uncovering like the works themselves and so on.
Yeah, this make me think of like the idea of talking with other people who of the event, to have their narrative, and to listen to different narratives. In a project that I was working on, when I found a photograph where 14 artists appears, I could recognize only 4 artists out of these 14 artists, and I started to make interviews with them, asking them about the other artists that they appear in the photographs. And also I met the same artist when I was searching on the missing exhibitions, and I was aiming to collect these narratives. But what happens is that because it is a shared event between these group of artists, sometimes they depend on each other's memory. So for example, I would, instead of having 2 narratives of the same event, I would have no narrative, because one of them would tell me, maybe ask this artist, he remembers more than me. And then I would go to the other artist, and he would mention the same artist who asked me to ask him. So I think it's really, for me, it is very interesting how memory functions, and also if something is lost, do you really accept, or there's something that accept it is missing. Sometimes there's something that I don't want to remember, that the exact narrative, or I don't know if it's, I'm sure it's not on purpose, but there is something about not remembering also that make the thing more mythical in a way.
Yeah, actually, this is nice. Because recently I've been thinking a lot about return, and in the Palestinian imagination, of course, return is huge, and I mean, so I'm not representing any canon, but I came to it in a really because what you're saying is that is like this like remembering and like trying to remember but forgetting and like there's this like hole, right, that also you can fill in like with stories, but yeah, this thing about return, yeah, maybe has to do with like how to return, like this question of the object in the 17 lost exhibitions, the film in the archive, like how to return to these objects that like I feel like in a very in a kind of maybe, yeah, I'm in a Western discourse, return is always kind of negative. It has to do with stasis, with the repetition of violence, with but in a sense, when there's something about the like for example about Palestine, but I think in other places where return is necessary, is there's kind of it we're all always returning. It's necessary, and in order to access something that was lost, but of course never retrievable, but return becomes really important. And in a sense, like the museums, the exhibiting of objects, it kind of doesn't allow for it, right? This return, although it seems like it does, right? Like this object, this collective object is available to you, right? Like this memory is available to you in this public institution, so that you gain access to return to it. But it actually it does the opposite. It kind of denies you this this return, and the return happens in yeah, I don't know how it happens, but we need this return, and I don't know how to return like these lost exhibitions. Like, why are we also kind of obsessed with the lost archive, with the lost
Yeah.
like, so there's an importance to return, but how to return to them, because from today, from the discourse of today doesn't allow you to, or it converts them into something else. Yeah, so it's kind of this
Yeah, you make me think of also the idea of nostalgia, like return parallel to nostalgia, and also nostalgia is kind of have a negative connotation in the Western context. And I think it's the what does nostalgia mean, or return in the West is really different than what does it mean in other contexts, because I think in the West it's a choice, but in other cases it's not a choice. It's a must somehow. You don't choose to be nostalgic. It's something like it's something that wears you in a way, and keep following you. It's something that is there all the time. It's not a choice if you want to be nostalgic or no, or if you want to return or no.
Yeah, I mean, this I don't know, like it directly relates to like looking at the militant cinema or revolutionary cinema, and I mean, this is something that continuously comes up, like this kind of being careful with being nostalgic, right? And like how to like approach the past And then, and necessarily it's returning, right? It's like you're kind of going backwards in terms of, like you're uncovering something that was made in years ago. And then we're constantly asking, like, so why, and how, right? It's like how to approach it without being nostalgic. And this carefulness with being nostalgic, in Palestinian context, it's quite political, right? It's because of like what has happened after the revolutionary period. It's like, and how kind of like the Palestinian struggle ended up like as a negotiations process. But we kind of in the collective, it was more about like having to, at some point we're like, okay, we're looking backwards, we're returning in order to go forwards, right? In order to also kind of like find a way to go to look into the future. And at first it was also like about like understanding the present and like understanding our kind of collective memory and where it is at the moment and what is being done with it, how it's like being politicized or depoliticized and so on and so forth. But then it was also about like the future and the imagination of the future as well. So yeah, this notion of returning, I think, is quite seems kind of inevitable, right? There's the actual, like what the physical return, like to the land and so on and so forth. But then also returning to this to these objects that also represent a certain, I don't know, I don't want to keep on repeating memory or like maybe memories, right? And kind of unlocking them and making them, like kind of available to us and having the right to have the, like to have them available as well.
You today earlier you started speaking about the like how you found the Hani Johariya syllabus actually in that way. No, because the syllabus was a kind of attempt to return to something from today with the Musirrin.
Yes.
I think of it as this.
Yeah. No, it's like it's constantly. The syllabus is quite particular because it's again, it was about like with this kind of accidental stumbling upon, right? Like the uncovering of a manuscript that was written by Hani Johariya, who was one of the filmmakers of the Palestine film unit. And we found it during the filming of Frame, the film, and we were it was during an interview with his widow Hind, and we were at her home, and then like where she's showing us, like she has like parts of his camera on a display, pictures of him, some other objects, and then there was this pile of papers. And then it turns out, like we asked her, what is it? And then she told us, yeah, this is something that Hani wrote. And then we quickly took pictures of it. And then, kind of, that was kind of forgotten for like a couple of years until we went back to it, returned to it again and looked at it. And then it turned out to be this manual for teaching cinematography. And it was basically just like about like the concrete anatomy of the apparatus, and like how to use a lens and how to measure light, and that was also like so that it took us a while to kind of decode the text because it was written and it didn't look very we had to like use Photoshop to use contrast to see what was actually written. And then we knew what we wanted to do with that particular manual. No, it's like translate it, transcribe it, and make it also like, again, somehow available, right? Bring it back into some sort of circulation. But then it was that question again of, so what are we doing with it now, today, in relation to today, right? And then, so the idea was, we kind of ended up in a conversation with Musireen, which is a video and filmmaking collective in Egypt. And that was kind of formulated around the Egyptian revolution. And then they also had a syllabus of teaching film, which they put together during and after the revolution. So that kind of started the conversation with them, right? And then, like it went beyond just the syllabus. It was also about, like producing the image, producing image during revolutionary times, and like how do you relate to revolution as a, like as a member of revolution, then also as a filmmaker. So yeah, so it's kind of, like using the like this object from the past to like also kind of like kind of instigate the present and see like what other like like also what other practices like similar practices use like pedagogy to be taught in like during revolutions or different struggles. So yeah, it was like, so basically it's like about these mechanisms of, like how to like, I don't know, we call them like sometimes curatorial mechanisms, right? Of like how to like kind of, like use the material to like extend the conversation just beyond the material itself, right? And beyond the collective as well. Yeah. Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I was thinking of when I was reading out the name of the novel, the title of the novel with that Noor wrote, I was thinking of the story, Noor, because it's from the story of one museum, no? And yes, I want to tell, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you want to talk about the book in general. Also.
You always tell this story better than me. So, you want to tell the story about the museum, Abu Jihad Museum?
No. No. But I might tell a story after about the Yasser Arafat Museum, but only if you want to tell the. I mean, yeah, I don't know if Reem knows it, so we kind of because Reem like in a sense like taking return as this archive, this moment that Mohannad and Reem found this, or it just came like just looking through papers with Hani's partner, and how it like keeps reoccurring in different, and it's like when the time is in a sense right, it happens, and it reminded me of this again, like going back to this burial, because the title of the novel, and I will repeat it now. I could never, this is one thing, I could never remember Noor's artworks titles by heart. Because they are great and long. It's like poetry, no? It's like you, and so I call them like, I have really like, Noor laughs every time, so I call them, different names, like
the Zoo Project, Vera's work, as if.
Yeah. But this one, the title of the novel is "The Earth Doesn't Tell Its Secrets," his father once said. And this is from the story. Wait, Andan is writing to me. Is all okay, Andan? Is everything fine?
Hey Lara.
Yes.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Now I'm listening about your explanation on the novel which is written by Noor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the novel's title is "The Earth Doesn't Tell Its Secrets," his father once said. And this
And
comes...
what is it called in Arabic?
Oh, it's even longer.
Ask Noor, because it's a different title and it's a very long title.
We need to listen it in Arabic language, I think. The title.
Ah, okay. Yes. Yeah, of course. It's a different title in Arabic.
Okay.
Yes,
Actually.
most of the works are different. The titles are different in English than in Arabic. But the novel in Arabic, I will try to remember the name because it's really a long name. It's 8 محاولات لملاحقة شائعة المتحف أو 6 محاولات لإيجاد شائعات أخرى. So it's 8 attempts to find the rumor of the museum, or 6 attempts to create other ones, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mumtaz.
Yes, Andan was saying it's fine if we need to speak Arabic sometimes. It's true. We speak to the natural language to speak to each other would be Arabic. Maybe I switch to Arabic for some time and we move back to English. Andan? Yes?
Yeah, تفضل.
Okay. شكرا يا أخي شكرا.
عفوا يا أختي.
فهاي القصة هاي من مدير متحف أبو جهاد، متحف الأسرة اللي في حرم جامعة القدس. ريم تعرفي المتحف؟ فقصة المتحف على الآخر رائعة. القصة طبعا يعني فعالة أكتر يمكن من المتحف، بس بالثمانينات مدير المتحف كان مسجون بالسجن الإسرائيلي، بالمعتقل الإسرائيلي، وكان لما يجوا أهله يزوروه يعطيهم رسومات، أغراض، في كمان كل الرسائل اللي بكتبها. بس كمان لما طلع أخذ من يعني رفاقه بالسجن اللي معه برضه أغراض وأشياء كانوا يعملوها بالسجن، ولما طلع خباها أو استشار أبوه وين يخبيها. هلا أنا مش متذكرة القصة، يمكن نور أنت بتتذكري أحسن. بس
استشار أبوه.
استشار أبوه.
استشار أبوه وين يخبيها، وقال له الأرض الوحيدة اللي ما بتحكيش أسرارها، فهو دفنهم تحت الأرض. واو.
وبعدين لما طلع مشروع المتحف طالهم وبلش مشروع يعني بلش كأنه يعني الكور كولكشن تبعت المتحف من هاي بس هذا الاشي يعني طبعا كان بعد أوسلو، كان بسياق السياسي اللي لازم هدول الاشياء يطلعوا من الارض ويروحوا على المتحف. بس بالضبط. فبس فكر لما يعني فكر الواحد بهاي الاشياء اللي بترجع، اللي كيف انه قصدي انه كيف نرجع لها وهي لسه مدفونه، بدل ما نطلعها يعني ونحطها بالمتحف. بس اظني يعني بالروايه، انا كثير بحب الروايه تبعت نور، لانه يعني في كل هاي انه شائعه المتحف هي دائما فعاله وبتنتج نقاش حواليه اكثر من المتحف نفسه، القصص. بس هذا من تاريخ، كمان تاريخ نور بتعرفه من ابوها. لا نور يعني من تاريخ
بالضبط.
معاش كمان.
بالضبط، يعني أنا بافكّر باتذكّر من لمّا كنت صغيرة، وكنت بافكّر إنه لمّا أكبر بدي أطلع محامية أصلًا، يعني ما إليش دخل بالفن، كنت باروح عشان بابا رسّام، كنت باروح معه على معارض، وباتذكّر يعني بدايةً من لمّا كنا نروح على الواسطي بالقدس لمّا كان مكانهم بالقدس، وبعدين صرنا نروح بعد بقى كم من سنة فتح الحوش، وأنا باتذكّر بالافتتاح تبع حوش الفن الفلسطيني وقت الopening كانوا بيقولوا إنه الحوش هو نواة لمتحف راح يطلع يعني بس بدوروا له على مكان هو المفروض إنه بيقولوا إنه أنا باتذكّر يقولوا إنه في collection هو لعمي هو وزوجته وهذا الكوليكشن تبع المتحف. في المتحف في الناراتيف تبع المتحف بس بدهم مكان لهذا المتحف. وانا بتذكر كمان كثير مرات يعني حتى لما كان بابا ياخذني من المدرسه يقول لي هذه الارض هي كراج بس ممكن كثير احتمال كثير كبير تصير هي المتحف بس هو لهلا الكراج لهلا هو جنب الجيروسالم هوتيل. وبعديها كل مرة كل زيارة للحوش كان يكون فيها أول متحف فلسطيني. بعدين في يكون ألاقي كتيبات عن أول يعني كتيبات بابا مخليها بمكتبته عن أول متحف فلسطيني. وكل مرة أول متحف فلسطيني هو بيختلف عن المرة اللي قبل. فبالرواية الناريتر بوصف هذا المصادفة تبعت كل مرة أول متحف بالمدينة لدرجة إنه خلت الناريتر إنه يشك بحال إنه إذا هي إشي حقيقة إنه هي إشي مش موجود بس هي إشي هوس ملاحق الناريتر وعم بشوفه بالسبيسز كأنه بس هو إشي مش موجود أصلاً. بس هذا الإشي كمان يعني الرواية هاي كتبتها ب 2016 بعدين ب 2018 كنت بلندن ولقيت صادفت صورة بالإمبيريال وور ميوزيوم بلندن يعني الصورة مش واضحة إيش هي بس واضح إنه إلها علاقة بالقدس لأنه في ساين مكتوب عليها جيروسالم في أشياء في elements مبينة إنها إلها علاقة بالسياق تبع القدس وكنت أنا فكرتها إنه هذه متحف سوري معرض صار بالقدس وإذا هي مزبوط معرض هي راح تكون كأنه هقدم صورة لمعرض بالقدس. بس بعدين بعد البحث عن هاي الصورة فتح بحث تاني عن الأوبسيشن تبع الفيرست Palestinian Museum اللي بدأ من الدولة العثمانية من نهاية الدولة العثمانية استمر للانتداب البريطاني. وكل مرة بيجي بده يكون افتتاح للمعرض للمتحف وبصير إشي وما بصير الافتتاح تبع المتحف يا إما الأغراض ما بتوصل يا إما بيجيهم قرار من بريطانيا إنه لا ما هذا المكان أثري ما بصير تحطوا فيه أغراض لازم تنقلوا على مكان تاني. فكل الوقت كان في هذه المحاولات تبعت الأول متحف فلسطيني أول متحف فلسطيني. وكانوا يقولوا له كمان بوقت الدولة العثمانية وقت الانتداب البريطاني كانوا يحكوا له المتحف الفلسطيني لحد ما اجى الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وصاروا اللي تصفى بالآخر كل ارتيفاكت تصفت بمكان واحد اللي هو متحف روكفلر اللي هو نسبة للكولكتيف أظن كان كولكتيف صح؟ كان كولكتيف أمريكي وأعطى دونيشن كتير ضخم للمتحف وغيروا من المتحف الفلسطيني لمتحف روكفلر.
بس رهيبين هدول القصص لأنه في كتير قصص جديدة كمان عن المتاحف اللي فتحت المتحف الفلسطيني كيف لما فتح كل حدا كتب عنه في الجرايد وفي كل محل انه فاضي، وصار نقاش طويل عليه، مع انه كان فيه اشياء، فيه اغراض المتحف، بس هذه طول الوقت يعني زي كأنه في obsession، في هوس في المتحف بفلسطين، وبنفس الوقت ما عمره بزبط، يعني في إشي دايما بضله مش راكب، مش موضوع الارشيف كمان بنفس الوقت، هذا الهوس اللي بالارشيفات، الارشيف هون، ارشيف هون، ارشيف وطني ومتحف وطني طبعا، يعني هذا المشروع اللي هو بيجمع الكل، بجيب الكل، بس طبعا له علاقه بمشروع الدوله وطبعا يعني هذا وهذا مش قادرين يركبوا مع بعض، لا. فهذا مثلا كمان ريم، ايش بتسموه انتو the imperfect archive، لا؟ في كثير ناس كمان بيحكوا عن the impossible museum، المتحف المستحيل، ايش الارشيف ايش بالعربي الارشيف
ولا
غير كامل،
غير كامل،
غير
عارفة
أرشيف
لا أظن لازم نفكر أكثر بالعربي إيش يعني مش عارفة إذا الترجمة بتزبط كمان لا imperfect، لا ترجمة حرفية للعربي.
بحس إنه الغير تام، الأرشيف الغير تام يعني ممكن لا
يعني بضحك وبحزن إنه ما في له اسم بالعربي. بس I mean أظني هاي كل القصص، يعني كيف واحد عم بيطلع على كل هاي المؤسسات، إنه هم بالآخر the structures right، إنه عم نحكي عن أرشيف وعن متاحف، بس كيف طول الوقت عم ندور على الالترناتيفز لإلها كمان، صح؟ فأنا أنا كثير مرات عم بفكر طب ليش لازم نرجع على نفس ليش لازم مثلا ليش لازم نرجع نسميهم بنفس الأسامي كمان مرة،
تماما،
ليش إنه لازم يضلوا أرشيف، أو ليش لازم يضلوا متحف، حتى يعني مثلا بنقاش مع ايرين ورنام عن المتحف الشيوعي، بالعربي المتحف الشيوعي صح؟ انه ليش لازم نرجع انه احنا طول الوقت عم نحاول انه مش بس نفكك هدول المؤسسات، بس كمان انه نطلع عليهم يعني كمحلات اللي مستحيله، صح؟ فليش لازم نرجع على نفس التسميه؟ ليش ما نقدر I don't know يعني ليش ما نقدر نطلع من هاي نفس المخيله بالاشياء وتنظيم الاشياء وهيك، even though يعني احنا بالممارسه ذاتها مش يعني عم نحاول او مش عم نساوي نفس
عم نكسر بالاساسيات تبعت هذه
يعني مثلا انه ما في categorizing لما عم نحكي عن او the imperfect archive، ومش عن كيف واحد يعني how you build categories
ما هو بس المشكله، ما هو ايش الفريمز اللي موجوده اللي عندنا لا اللي بنعرفها وقادرين نستعملها، زي موضوع العوده، يعني لانه بفريم الوقت الخطي بتصفي يعني اصلا مستحيله في يعني هي هاي المشكله، وهي اللي عشان هيك مثلا انا بفكر اخذني كثير وقت اني اطلع من النقد لاني اطلع على اشكال تانية، لانه كمان هاي الفريم وركس اللي افيلبل يمكن لنا كمان، بس معك حق، يعني ممكن كثير مهم نفكر بتسميات تانية في لغة تانية عشان نقدر نطلع منها.
بالضبط. أنا هذا كتير بذكرني برضه بنقاش فتناه قبل لارا، وهي فكرة إنه يعني التاريخ بين إنه المتاحف في إشي مش ظابط بهذه البلد. طيب فبدال ما الواحد يحاول يظبطها، ليه ما يشوف إيه الموجود ويكون هو يعني ممكن إشي تاني موجود بفانكشن بكتير أكتر من المتحف بالعلاقة مع الذاكرة. ووقتها كنا عم نحكي على الراديو، وأنا حسب رأيي إنه في إشي على الآخر ممكن يكون كتير، يعني كان وقتها السياق إنه عم نحكي على راديو الحارة، بس عم بفكر إنه يعني أول ما لارا اقترحت هذا الإشي إنه نفكر بالراديو كمتحف، أولها كان شوي حسيت بعيدة عن المتحف، بس بعدين صرت ألاقيها كل إشي مطابق للأشياء إحنا بنحكي فيها، على فكرة إنه الذاكرة بالراديو عمرها ما بتتجمد، لأن الراديو هو أصلاً إشي مش مسجل، هو إشي بنذاع وبتوقف بنذاع وبتوقف، بس بتطلب كل الوقت ناس تضلها تحكي كل الوقت، لازم يعني عشان يشتغل الراديو وعشان القصص تنسمع لازم الواحد يضله يحكي كل الوقت، يعني ولا مرة لا الراديو لازم يسكت. فبفكر في إشي بالإماتيرياليتي تبعت الراديو، وبكل فكرة إنه كل فكرة اللي في حكي وفي سمع، في حكي وفي سمع، في حكي وفي سمع، وكل مرة الحكي هو متجدد، هو بتغير، بس بنفس الوقت هو بيحمل الاسنس تبع الإشي اللي عم بينحكى. بفكر انه ليه ما يكون راديو هو الشيء اللي بيحفظ الذاكره عنا؟ ليه لازم يكون متحف؟ واحنا كمان يعني كدوله اللي هي تحت استعمار، اللي هي من سنين طويله، يعني اللي هي كل الوقت كانت تحت استعمار، احنا مش بحاجه لانه شيء نعرض فيه عضلاتنا وبعدين حدا يجي هيك بدبوس ينفذها، يعني لانه المبنى هيك. انا بتذكر وقت الانتفاضه الثانيه، وقت ما صار القصف، الجامعات اللي انقصفت، كل المباني الكبيره هي اللي كانت وقت ما رام الله انقصفت. فاحنا ليه نربط حالنا بالإشي المادي اللي هو احنا بكل سهوله بنقدر نخسره، بينما في إشي اللي هو على الاخر اقوى كتير من الإشي المادي، ومش بس اقوى، هو بيوسع كتير اكتر، كتير بيوسع اكتر. الحكي عمره ما بخلص، بس المساحه تبعت المتحف بتخلص اول ما تحط فيها مش عارفه كم من قطعه، يعني حتى لو 200 قطعه 300 قطعه، بس إلها ليميت بالآخر.
إلها ليميت، وإلها ليميت للساعة، وإلها ليميت لمن بسمع ومن بشوف ومن كتير حلو عقلين كيف عم تحكي، وإنه القصص مش ما يعني هي لأنه القصص كمان الحكي هو يعني جزء من كمان الممارسة اليومية ومن كيف بنحكي عنها
لك هو له أظن برجع كمان له علاقة، برجع لبداية النقاش تبعنا اللي هو قصة الثمن، no or like the value, right؟ وقديش الأشياء مربوطة بال you know like the value of the object, no إنه وهذا يعني هذا I guess يعني هذا هو دور هدول المؤسسات، no إنه كمان إنه يربطوا الأشياء اللي جواتهم بفاليو معينة، صح؟ لما واحد بحكي عن عن شيء زي الراديو، يعني المفهوم الفاليو تماما يعني بده يعني واحد يرجع يفكر فيها، صح؟ وكيف هذا and how it circulates also, صح؟ الفاليو وهيك.
So Andan I just saw that Andan forwarded us a question. So maybe we switch back to English and are you suggesting, Andan, that we take questions? I don't know where the questions are being posted.
It's actually the question from the YouTube live. There is a chat room, and then one of our one of the one of our friends who's attending this session posted a question which I already sent to the chat room. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can read the question.
Yeah, I can read it. So, hello. This is the question. Hello. Would you also rethink on nostalgia as a mechanism of identification of our biography? Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Mechanism of identification of our biography. Would anyone like to?
You know, I think this makes me, you know, can I start with answering this
Please,
question?
yeah.
I would I would like to tell a story actually as an answer. One of the interviews that I did in the novel is with a man in his 70s, almost in his 70s, and he used to be a taxi driver between Jerusalem and Cairo, and Jerusalem and Beirut, and he worked as a driver because he needs money, but and this is his main job. But he was fascinated with taking photographs, so he used to take in his trips to those destinations, and sometimes he would take his family members and go to these destinations as a vacation, and they would stop in the middle of the way and so on, and he documented all these things. So he have a huge amount of photographs, black and white photographs in his blue biscuit box in his house. And when we started to talk about these photographs, at the beginning, I was looking at these photographs when he was completely silent, and it's black and white photographs from Palestine. They are heavily nostalgic. It's not only because they are black and white, but also they are from Palestine, and in a specific period where Palestine wasn't as what it is today. And when he started to speak about these photographs, he was very strict in describing them. So locations and people were not personalized. He would tell me what exactly I'm seeing in these photographs, and even he started to describe the colors of these, the dress that a lady was wearing, and he started to say the colors from black, gray to white. You know, it's not as if she was wearing a gray dress and the tree is black. You know, so in a way, he was really, he was, these photographs is a big part of his life. And it's very important. He represent them to me as if these are the things that he owns today, you know. And he kills every nostalgic thing in these photographs. So I think that what is he doing is completely the opposite of making them as a biography, but at the same time, after his description, when I look at these photographs, I see them in a completely different way than any black and white photographs from that period of time in Palestine. So yeah, in a way, I think that it might be like really the opposite.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, I think this goes back to like talking about nostalgia, and it goes back to this kind of, Lara, what you mentioned, this kind of obsessiveness with archives and, you know, like, and history, and why there's like, I mean, archive is part of many practices, not just like in art or film, but like also like in the academia. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, I think, I'm going to go back to like a very personal experience and this kind of fear almost of being, like nostalgic, right? Towards the past, even though we feel it, no? It's like, it's on a personal level, no? It's like, it's there. I mean, when I'm seeing a film that, I mean, I am not, like connected to in any way whatsoever. I do feel a certain, yes, this certain, like, like, what to call it? I mean, the Arabic word for nostalgia is really amazing, no? It's like haneen. It's like, it holds this, like, this warmth, right? It's like, there is like this, like warmth that you feel towards the, an intimacy almost, right? To the past. And this is something that, like I think, I mean, definitely, like, we definitely carry that, but like when it comes to the work itself, this is where, like you kind of want to, like you want to like just think or rethink how, like you want to step around nostalgia, right? And see how you're like, how to deal with it in terms of, like producing something out of this, this material. But I mean, on an inner level, I think, nostalgia definitely kind of, like plays, is present, no? I mean, I don't know, sometimes I think, is it something that's also generational as well, right? It's like, maybe we come from a certain generation that, like, because that past is quite recent. It was like almost, like back to our, like to us being born in the 80s and onward. Because I mean, I don't feel like when speaking to the, it's maybe similar to you, Noor, and the taxi driver. When speaking to the people of the films, it's like there is a certain, they have an emotion, right, towards that period, but I don't think they feel nostalgia. I mean, at least that didn't come up, like in our conversations with them. It was important also, like, to kind of, present, like a certain record, like of what they were doing and what they were part of. But nostalgic, I don't know. I mean, I don't really feel that, there's this,
Yeah, even when I think about the, as you're saying, the people who you talked with, that you didn't feel that they were nostalgic, or the taxi driver that was trying to break the nostalgia. I think even taking this position is very similar to when I meet artists, some artists from Palestine, and they would say, my work does not deal with politics. I don't work with politics, and it's the most political act they would do, as an artist, is to say, I don't want to make or I don't want to I don't want politics in my art. It is there. The act of saying this makes it there. And I think also that in the case, for example, the taxi driver, I think maybe it's there is a fragility there that it might break if when facing this nostalgia, or feeling open, or confronting this nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, I'm trying to remember the name of a film, and like I'm thinking about nostalgia as return, and what Noor was saying about that we are also denied, like nostalgia is also looked at as something, like not only you show your vulnerability, but something negative, as cliched, right? As like almost like a cliche, but there is this. So like with return as well, like this, you're returning to a moment. like one thing is to realize that you are returning to a moment which you would like to belong to. You feel that you belong to, no, and really, like for example, this one thing that like sometimes is problematic, I feel like when people speak about pre-48, they speak about orange groves and but they speak as about orange groves in a way that is this is in a way that of the loss we lost, but never about the land ownership.
Exactly.
What was happening, you know, like the feudals and the families and who was working on the land and the farmer, these politics, right? Like, but then at the same time, you know, so there's this kind of nostalgia, but that using this kind of image to like image over memory to mask the problematics that but there is a kind of return in, for example, like in commemoration that I find really amazing, like when Palestinians from 48 return to their villages, they actually return, they go every year and they go to the woods and to the village if it's still still there, the land, not a settlement on, but actually they do it, you know, like. So it's nostalgia, of course, for the home that you and you want to kind of teach your kids also to feel nostalgic, right? Like this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is.
I just want to say a small thing about what you said. I really like that you say they really go, but they don't return. And I think it's a huge difference that maybe we have to go, not return somehow, because returning is somehow is using the same path that we went from, but going there, it's a different, there's different ways to go, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, it's, this notion of going, right? Rather than going to something, rather than returning, because going to is intentional, right? And returning is kind of like, you're not quite sure, you know, like at least maybe in the case of Palestine, it's like you're not really, you don't know what you're returning to, right? I mean, and there is definitely, it's also like, you know, Lara,
No, please go ahead.
like Lara, this like kind of, you know, like painting these, you know, like these kind of images, you know, like of a Palestine as a, I don't know, an orange orchard or whatever, olive orchard, whatever. This, I mean, this happens in the absence of, you know, like the absence or like kind of being physically removed, no? Also like from, you know, like from the place where you were not being on the actual land, no? And this is the problem anyway, thinking about, you know, like 48 and about, you know, like the revolution as well. And then, you know, like Oslo, it's like like very often class is dropped, right? It's like, you know, no, we no longer talk about class and, you know, like actually, you know, like the political systems that were exercised by other, like, you know, like whatever, occupiers, but then also within the, you know, like the social structures, the Palestinian social structures and so on. And this, so maybe this is something, you know, like this is something that, you know, like when we say to avoid nostalgia is to kind of, you know, like go like scratch under like all these, you know, like layers, right? Surfaces, and kind of, you know, like also uncover all the different, again, stories, right? It's like, because, yeah.
Noor, you were about to say something.
No, it was only a word. Yani, it's just I was excited about what Reem was saying, and then I said the word that she's saying. But yes, I think also, yani, returning means also returning returning. I don't know how to say this in English, but إنه نرجع بالوقت كأنه it's not only the place but also the time. Yes, and especially when you mentioned this orange trees, I think I think the image of the whole country is different today than in the past. So you would never be able to return to these places.
There is this question I always love. It comes from Jumana Aboud's work, actually. And you know how she uses folk tales to, you know, her project on how she returns to this survey that a Palestinian anthropologist did in the 20s about water springs in Palestine and stories around water springs in Palestine. So like, and it's always like this question. She visits 100 years after, and you know, of course, the many water springs have disappeared, and along with them the stories. So it's like like from her work, there's this question of like, okay, so but if you keep the stories alive, you also keep the kind of access to return to those water springs also alive in a sense, like, because with the disappearance of the actual land, the stories disappear, right? And but if you bring back also the stories in a sense, does this give you access? Does this keep it kind of this relationship also? Because this is, I mean, in terms of return and nostalgia, and it's also nostalgia is in a sense is also very important, although sometimes it's masking many, you know, political and class tensions underneath. It's also a way to sustain the story and the memory as well, right? I mean, in a sense, it like sometimes it even needs to be romanticized, right? Like all these stories also about, you know, heroic figures from, you know, like but this is what also invisibility does, right? This is like the other face, like when when the land disappears, when the objects are not there, when the exhibitions are lost, when the archive is you know somewhere else. It's in a sense also nostalgia keeps it alive. It kind of, something happens with it. It's when it's romanticized, something keeps it also maybe but at least, you know, even if it's romanticized in a way where, you know, yeah, I'm in like I've entered a model here because it's a long like a long debate, but yeah, that sometimes like sometimes in a sense revolutionary movements create this romantic nostalgia, or people around create around them this romantic nostalgia. Yeah, let's call it romantic nostalgia, in order to keep it kind of alive and to give access to it. But then, you know, yeah, one should also question it in a sense. Yeah. Yeah, no, go ahead, Reem.
No, because I kept on thinking also about, you know, like oral histories, right? Because that's also something that's kind of, you know, like I mean, before the whole, you know, like kind of obsession with the archive started, there was this kind of, you know, like obsession with oral histories. And at least within Palestine, but then also outside of Palestine in the camps, and so also recording, right? It's like kind of trying to capture, you know, like this. I mean, I'm just thinking of the different mechanisms, right, that were used to kind of, you know, like to return, you know, and like now it's so yeah, I mean, for quite some time, like I mean, what was called oral histories, right? But they're just, you know, kind of memories, you know, like of people, of the events, and kind of, I think more or less they would return to like all these, you know, like to the same moments, right? Like 48, probably 67, you know, passing on to like, you know, like the actual exodus, you know, like in what would happen. But then it's interesting, I mean, what happened, who was doing these, you know, like who was making those, recording the oral histories, and then how from that it kind of, you know, like oral histories, because I remember for a very long time it was, you know, like it was very present, you know, in Ramallah, in the West Bank. At the time when all the NGOs were mushrooming, and, you know, this was kind of the work, you know, that they were doing. And then that totally disappeared, right? And then archive kind of stepped onto the stage, and or archives, and how, you know, like kind of being busy with like more, you know, like with already existing records, how that, but you know, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I keep on thinking, like when we're talking about nostalgia, it's also about, you know, like how kind of the different knowledge that is passed on as well, right? It's like also with Jumana's work, thinking of, you know, like of folk tales, you know, they carry on a certain knowledge, right? And it's like the idea is to not just tell stories, but, you know, like to pass on. So nostalgia, I mean, telling, yeah, nostalgia is a way of also like passing a certain knowledge, right? Depending where, you know, like where it comes from and who's.
Yeah. Yeah, but speaking about this, the oral, this obsession, I remember it had to do with all of these human rights NGOs, to hear the personal story, you know. But of course, you know, I mean, of course, there were amazing oral histories, but the moment that the conversation was framed, the camera was in place, the also the story changed and kind of entered the classically told in many ways. And you know, there was a plan for a museum in Bethlehem. I think the UN and the Palestinian Authority wanted to do a museum of oral histories, and I mean, it completely failed. And I think it's not a coincidence. You know, sometimes I think the content does not like allow the the structure to like how can you put oral, you know, history? Of course, everywhere else it's done all the time, but like how can you yeah. But in a sense, it's also just to say that there is this question of how to keep it alive without the structure of the museum, but also sometimes even the forms that these oral histories also that keep the stories, the knowledge, you know, passed on, keep it alive, are also museumified even without entering the museum. By particular forms and formats and ways of also and framing. It's you know, this is the kind of also it's not, you know, this or that. It's not like if they enter the museum then they are museumified, and if they stay outside, it's not always the case. Like with this archive and films, it depends on the narrative, because, you know, even individuals and groups and particular structures and ideologies can also, So Andan tells me that our time is up, and I was asking if whether there are more questions. Andan, from the YouTube.
Yeah, I'm here. So actually, we've been talking for an hour and a half, telling stories, and then so it's very interesting to listen to this conversation on how you have been working together and then practicing of the way you share many things, and also as we now separated in different continents. I think we are now in 4 different continents. Europe, no, three, right? Three.
Yes.
Yeah.
Africa, Europe, and Asia.
Yeah. So this is what we call as hanging out, telling stories, because up until now we still cannot meet in persons, but I'm pretty sure that in the future we can still meet in persons, hanging out in real life, having coffee, and then telling our stories to each other. And thank you so much for your time. Actually, I'm not going to make any conclusions because there are no conclusions of our stories, especially our stories this evening. But thank you so much for Reem Shilleh and Noor Abuarafeh, and also, of course, Lara Khaldi, our host and storyteller this evening. Thank you so much for your time for this Walkie Talkie session 5. And also thank you to JJ Adibrata, who's operating from Good School in Jakarta for the Zoom and YouTube Live. And also thank you so much for all the participants, and also all the people attending this virtual and online storytelling and hanging out. Thank you so much. And
Terima kasih.
yeah, Lara, you want to say something before we close?
No, I think it's fine. I don't know if Noor and Reem, I would like to thank them for hanging out with me today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, then, and hope to see you soon in real life.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.